So last one we're going to go into today, why did Initialized Capital invest in Rippling? So some of you may not have heard of Rippling for two reasons. First, it's not a public company, but it was last valued at $11.25 billion in March of 2023. And the NASDAQ has gone up quite a bit since then. So it's possible they're worth at least $15 billion if they continue to be hitting their numbers. So while they're not a public company, they might as well be, because they're certainly a massively successful company. And second of all, it's an HR and IT software company, so it's not really the most exciting product that many non-business owners would know too much about. But obviously, at least $11 billion valuation is no joke. So how did this company go from $0 to $11 billion in just 7 years? Startups are crazy, 7 years. And not only that, but how did the Initialized team, once again find a diamond in the rough? Well, the first thing that appealed to the Initialized team was that Rippling was bringing software to HR and IT in industry with many manual processes that hadn't been automated by software yet. And Initialized Jen Wolf describes the firm thesis on this concept as follows. She says, quote, find companies building software solutions in industries like manufacturing, grocery, and freight. Industries that might still be using paper or email or old Excel sheets. Sometimes you call those file cabinet businesses because they've got all the paper around to do things. So those are companies that need to adopt technology in order to stay competitive and innovate in their industries, end quote. So finding industries like those file cabinet businesses are such an obvious place to start a new company, to bring software to those industries. Typically, it's taken so long to bring software, like in grocery, because it's so expensive. It took Instacart a lot to go right in order for them to be a successful company. Or in freight, like Flexport, it takes a lot, again, to go right to make that happen, because these are such manual and large and slow industries that they haven't adopted software for that reason. And it's really hard to bring software to those industries. So again, HR and IT are like one of those industries, because for the non-founders out there, try to imagine hiring an employee. There's payroll, benefits, Microsoft Office, Google Suite, Slack, other software they might need like Salesforce or Monday.com. There's legal resources, there's time tracking, and many more, and many more. And so while there's certainly software, all of that, again, like I touched on, Slack, Salesforce, Monday.com, onboarding a new employee into all those entities is each its separate and menial task that every time requires setting up a new account and wasting a lot of time during the onboarding process to understand and organize which employee needs which software, setting them up with all of that software, meeting with the IT person regularly for issues in setting up that software. So, while there is software in that business, it's still a file cabinet like process in a way, because it's still very manual and slow and one by one. Whereas Rippling essentially built an app store like platform to bring all of those separate software into one place where all information and data can be transferred among one another. So therefore, when your new hire makes an account through Rippling, you can assign them to whatever software they need access to and get them set up in no time. So rather than having to get them set up with Salesforce and Slack and Google and their payroll and benefits provider, all you have to do is set them up with a Rippling account and assign them to each thing that they need access to, and then you're done. And so for a large company onboarding multiple people a day, this obviously saves so much time for employees and for managers and so on and so forth, so they can get back to actually growing the business and doing what they need to do for their jobs. And so that's essentially what Rippling was when they launched their product and what they've been since. But once again, like Initialize has done many times in the past, they invested when this was just an idea. I mean, you could say even Coinbase and Instacart had at least an MVP because they were able to, showcase their product to Garry Tan in exceptional cold emails. But Rippling had nothing. Rippling had a pitch deck and an investment memo. They didn't have a product. They didn't have an MVP to show Garry Tan because it was going to be a tough thing to build. and you couldn't really go step by step. Again, they're building a full-on platform. So you can't really start with like one section. You got to build the platform. So since they had to invest at the idea stage, if you've listened to my podcast episodes before or have read the Substack before, some type of alarm should be going off in your head that this was likely an investment based on the founder, which I'd say you're right. So Garry Tan originally met the Rippling founder and CEO, Parker Conrad, at Y Combinator when Parker went through the accelerator with his first company back in 2012, I believe, Zenefits. And back then, and still to this day, Garry considers Parker one of the best founders he's ever met. He's just an incredibly sharp guy who can emit such a clear vision and provide such a high value product for a user. And this combination of improving the lives of users through software led by an incredible founder, might make you think, like this sounds like a pretty interesting place to work. They're getting some important jobs done. They'll likely really improving the lives of users. They'll likely be a pretty valuable company. And so if you're feeling that way, then you know how the initialized partners felt, especially Garry Tan, when they made this investment in Rippling. In fact, one of their investment theses is investing in companies they'd want to work for. And Garry Tan described this principle as follows. He said, quote, "It's like, hey, this person made a thing that's awesome. If they can make this, they're going to attract other people who can recognize that this is awesome. Through the like attracts like principle, this is going to be a magnet for all other smart people who know how to build." I think that's underrated, actually. People don't recognize this, but people who are really, really good at building really like working with other people who know how to build. That's the real currency of being able to build software in Silicon Valley, is actually where the builders want to go and where they want to work. That tends to be the thing that is the future. We still use this as one of the primary things that we look for when we sit across the founder, is if I wasn't doing this right now, if I were going to look for a job, would this be one of the top 10 places that I would go work at? Can you convince me? Then we look at all of each other with all of these different backgrounds, and it's like, would all of us want to go to work there? The cool thing is that if you have a fund that is a bunch of people who, if you did go work there, you'd be a pretty good startup, end quote. So there are two reasons why debating whether you'd want to work at a company you're considering investing in is such a good filter for a startup investment. First, you kind of are deciding to go work there. If you invest in this company and if you even take a board seat, you're going to be partners for likely a decade with this founder and with this company. You're going to have to do whatever you can to help them. So you better get along with the founder and be aligned with the mission and enjoy, in a way, working at the company. And the other situation, as Tan emphasized, is if the idea is really interesting to you and, ideally other people then chances are other exceptional builders will want to work at this company. Garry Tan is a great filter for this because he was a great builder himself. He was a great founder himself. So if he feels that way, it's pretty obvious that other builders, other great founders will feel that way as well. And so since that leads to more builders wanting to work there, once those initial builders work there, other builders want to work there, and you eventually get this Golden State Warriors super team of engineers making this company basically too talented to fail. So having that radar of attracting people to want to work at your company is a really great filter to consider when investing in a startup. And so since Garry Tan admired Parker Conrad's operating ability and aligned with Rippling's mission of making all the annoying manual onboarding and other HR and IT processes automated and simple through an app store, through a platform that was rebundling all of these unbundled SaaS products. Some companies would have 10 different SaaS products. Rippling is trying to rebundle all of those into one product. Since they were automating that process, making that process easier, and since Garry Tan really liked Parker Conrad as a founder, he'd want to work there. And therefore, since he'd want to work there, he could assume other exceptional people would want to work there. Because again, Garry Tan's a pretty exceptional person. And so because of that, Initialized led a $7 million seed round into Rippling, which I'd assume they invested somewhere between $3.5 to $4.5 million total because it was really crowded around. So typically the lead investor takes around 50% or maybe a little more. Again, because this isn't a public company, so I don't have all this information. But if that's the case, if they invested somewhere between $3.5 and $4.5 million, and Initialized is following their goal of having a 10% ownership in these companies, they likely have about $1.1 billion in value held in their Rippling stock. So I'm not sure how much they've invested in total because, again, none of these numbers are public, but I'd expect this will be at least a 100x investment for Initialized with potentially a $1 billion return. Once again, multiplying the total fund many times over. A fund that in 2017 was a $125 million fund, likely the fund they invested in Rippling out of. So if it is at least $1 billion in value, again, there's another chance of a 10x of a fund, just like Instacart and Coinbase demolishing 10x of a fund. Coinbase is more of 1,000x of a fund, but regardless, Rippling has the potential to be a really great investment. I'm looking forward to seeing the actual numbers once they go public.